Okay, guys, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and get this party started. We are in the middle of discussing logical fallacies right now. So, starting from the current slide, and hopefully this will work. Let's see how this looks. Yeah, we basically are there, I think. Okay, so this lecture picks up from where the last one left off. About where we're talking about these subtle, deceptive logical fallacies that you may encounter. The next one on our list is false equivalence. That is treating both sides of an argument as equally valid and seeking a middle ground between them. Obviously, this is not always a problem. It is a problem, however, if there's some reason why they should not be considered to have a middle ground between them. The best and most horrible case that I can think of for the self-evident bullshittiness of false equivalence is the historical compromise that resulted in African American slaves being legally defined as 3/5 of a person back in the 1850s. One side said that African Americans were humans. The other side said that they were not. Obviously, one of those sides was right and the other one was wrong. And the answer was not somewhere in the middle. It was... can't really take that phone call right now. Several news organizations that I could mention practice false equivalence fairly regularly because it's easy and lets them off the hook for any kind of value judgments. They'll have a government bureaucrat on to explain a program, and then they'll queue up some screechy extremist to rebut, the implication being that the answer is somewhere in the middle. And it often is, but only when both sides are debating in good faith. And also, sometimes, there's sort of a natural tendency to assume, okay, the answer is somewhere in the middle. So side A is here and side B is here. So the correct answer is here, when usually it's more like here, right? Not quite at side A, but way far away from side B. Anyway, misleading vividness is number 16. And taking as an example an event so horrifying that it cannot be ignored, and urging that action must be taken to prevent it from recurring, even though the chances that it will happen again are virtually zero, or that the action that is being urged to prevent it from recurring will actually expose us to bigger and worse risks than the original one. I've got another horrible example for you. It's been a few years, so the pain has dulled a little bit, but the best example of misleading vividness I know of is the Sandy Hook incident, which was an episode so horrific that otherwise sensible people started talking about sending security guards and even janitors into elementary schools with loaded guns. Obviously, that kind of talk got shut down once actual insurance actuaries got involved and said, are you insane? Do you know how many people accidentally shoot their guns off when they're, for instance, emptying a mop bucket? Anyway, related examples are the stories that occasionally make national news about children being abducted by strangers, which cause parents to forbid their children from walking on the streets of their own town, even though the chances of a similar event happening are roughly 1 in 200 million. Although misleading vividness is a fallacy, it's often unavoidable. For instance, if you have survived a plane crash, chances are you'll never willingly get on an airplane again, and neither will your friend Wilson. Even though you know perfectly well that your chances of crashing are in the millions to 1 against, and that Wilson, being by definition a volleyball, will bounce back from it. Misleading vividness also is remember that article about how marijuana driving up accident scenes on NBC News, and they led it off with this horrific looking crash picture of a 12-year-old child being extracted from a mangled vehicle. Misleading vividness. Number 17 is poisoning the well. This is basically a preemptive ad hominem attack. It's basically reframing, saying something that predisposes your audience against your opponent. Like, for instance, the leadership of the FBI is doing the Democrats' bidding. Or, you see a less dangerous version of this sort of thing coming out when a political party settles on a nominee, right? The general bad stuff starts coming out about the other side. We get to hear about Mitt Romney, the unfeeling capitalist raider, Barack Obama, the feckless socialist, John McCain, the tantrum-prone loony, if you want to go back that far. That's actually quite a ways back to go. Whisper campaigns are almost always well poisonings. Dick Nixon in 1962 had campaign workers calling California voters with anonymous, untraceable election eve phone calls that said, "Hey, did you hear? Pat Brown is a communist." Click. Didn't work. Pat Brown was elected. Red herring. A red herring is a distraction from the argument, like changing the subject, right? So ad hominem arguments are almost always red herrings. Red herrings of all types are usually the last-ditch argument that you put up when you realize you're losing, and you want to distract somebody from it so that you can, change the subject. Special pleading is number 19, and that is suggesting that a principle should apply to others, but not you. Okay, the example that leaps to mind for me is Dick Nixon's famous remark, which I am going to play for you now. Or am I?
So what in a sense you're saying is that there are certain situations, the Houston plan or that part of it was one of them, where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's special pleading. The laws apply to others. They do not apply to me. Number 20 is the fallacy of composition and division, which is the fallacy of composition argues that because individual components of an idea or a thing are good, the whole idea or thing must be good, and division is the other way around. It's a little abstract, so let's get straight to examples. Bacon maple donuts. Disgusting. You gotta love bacon. And maple donuts, if you don't like maple donuts, you're a communist. But no, not together. Okay, a little bit. So I just slagged what probably somebody's favorite voodoo donut right there. But let's use something less controversial. Ice cream and tuna fish, both delicious foods. So you're going to love this ice cream tuna fish sundae I made for you. Yeah, that's the idea. Now, that brings us to the end of our quick run-through the logical fallacies that are pressed into the service of bullshit production day in and day out in the corridors of power and elsewhere. If you find this stuff interesting, you should consider taking a class in informal logic, because we've barely scratched the surface here, and there's a pretty awesome website full of these, and whoops, what did I just do? And other things at the NISCOR project, which... I'm going to go back to logical fallacies here so that I can see what I'm doing. The NISCOR project, and here's that again. The NISCOR project is www.niscor.org/features/fallacies, and they've got a huge list of them. And if you are studying Italian, you can find it in Italian as well. So anyway, that brings us to a conclusion with that one. Now, I now have a presentation for you. I'm going to tell you the Greg Mortensen story. It leads off with a video. Now, you probably will have noticed I haven't done a sound check, but that video of Dick Nixon denying everything probably didn't come through loud and clear, I'm guessing. So I'm not going to do that with this one. I'm going to skip past the video and I'm going to go on with a thing, but then I'm going to upload the video to Canvas. What I would like you guys to do is watch that video first. If you've gotten to this point here and you haven't watched the 60 minutes excerpt, it's 10 minutes long of Greg Mortensen getting challenged by 60 Minutes, please pause the video now and go and watch that one and then come back to this one and finish it up. Because I'm going to be moving on and assuming that you have done so. Okay, so Slideshow starting from here. Doink. Okay. By now you have no doubt read. Oh, wait a second. I didn't assign that to you because I didn't want you guys to have to spend $10 on that not worth $10 book. But there's well, by now you will have watched 60 Minutes, so that's the same kind of thing. Anyway, the rest of the Greg Mortensen story. Oh, you know what? I should. Never mind. Okay, so this is the 60 Minutes story, which I'm going to have you guys watch. Let me tell you about Greg Mortensen. Gosh, I can't talk today. Greg Mortensen. He was born in 1957 in Minnesota, and his parents were Lutheran missionaries. Almost as soon as Greg was born, his family hustled, or his parents hustled the family off to Tanzania. And there, his parents founded that country's first teaching hospital, and his mother served as the principal of an international school. The family lived on the flanks of Mount Kilimanjaro. And when he was only 11 years old, Greg hauled off and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, it's not entirely clear if he summited the thing. It's 20,000 feet high, and Greg was 11 years old. It doesn't seem real likely that he actually summited it, but maybe he did. I don't know. In any case, standing there looking out over the Serengeti must have done something for Greg, because mountain climbing became his early life's enduring passion. The family moved back to Minnesota when Greg was 15. He finished high school there, and then he joined the United States Army, serving for 2 years in Germany as a medic and earning a commendation medal there. He served from 1975 to 1977, and then he came back to the States and started college at the University of South Dakota. Now, Greg was very interested in medicine at this point because his baby sister Krista had epilepsy and generally was kind of frail, and he wanted to learn something that would enable him perhaps to help her. So in college he followed a pre-med track, graduated from the University of South Dakota, won admission to medical school, but then his father died, and that threw the family's finances into a tailspin. So he moved home and went to work as a nurse, an emergency room nurse, to help support the family while his mother earned her PhD in education. Doubtless the thinking was, I can make good money as an ER nurse. Mom can't make good money as a non-PhD holding educator, so let's get Mom through college and then I will deal with my medical education later. But plans change. After she got her degree in education, her PhD, he apparently decided medical school wasn't for him after all. And so he moved to San Francisco and started climbing mountains. Now, this was back when you could live in San Francisco and not be a freaking VC billionaire, right? This was back, in the old days when it was just another city with a somewhat high rental market. So he lived there, worked in the hospitals, saving lives and whatnot, and climbing mountains on the weekends when he could. Mortensen worked graveyard shifts at the hospitals and lived very simply, probably ate a lot of oatmeal and not very much steak, so that he could finance these trips, frequent and dangerous mountaineering expeditions all over the world, from the Rockies to the Himalayas. And then Krista died, baby sister Krista. And Mortensen decided that he was going to climb the second highest mountain in the world, K2, on the Pakistan-China border, that big barnacle-looking job there, and place one of her bracelets there as a memento. The attempt on the peak was aborted when a fellow climber collapsed, and Mortensen had to help rescue him, and that was exhausting because there's no oxygen up there. It's hard enough lugging yourself around, much less schlepping some guy with a broken leg or whatever. So anyway, he started down the mountain from base camp, planning to try again another time. And that's when the story gets all weird. Did Mortensen actually stumble into Corfey, as he claimed in the book? Well, it's pretty clear that he did not, as we saw on the 60 Minutes video. You did watch the 60 Minutes video, didn't you? If you didn't, stop the tape now and go watch that video. But anyway, maybe he did go to Corfey for a few hours. Who knows? I don't. I'm not even sure that he does. Well, at this point in our talk, I do want to pause for a moment and go into metaspace. I did not assign you to read this. This is John Krakauer's essay about 3 Cups of Tea. 3 Cups of Deceit. If you had read it, you would have noticed right away it is suffused with the bitterness of a freshly fleeced sucker. And a little bit of that was actually coming through in the 60 Minutes video. You did watch it, didn't you? Anyway, this is certainly something that you should notice and filter for accordingly when you're trying to get to the bottom of a story like this. It's almost like he's suggesting that Mortensen made a cynical, calculating decision to go into business, defrauding himself and other charitable contributors. Probably not a fair characterization. Whether he's a liar or not, it is clear that when Mortensen got to the bottom of that mountain, something happened that changed his life. Before that, he'd been working as a nurse and climbing mountains. After that, he made a complete change and went into charity work. It is not very logical to think that after descending from that mountain, Mortensen would have had a long think over what to do with his life and come to a conclusion and gone, you know what? I'm going to dedicate my life to building useless school buildings that look good from far away so I can make a fancy and awesome living fleecing suckers like that Krakauer schlub. Probably not. Yet, as you will probably have noticed, or you may have noticed, Krakauer's at least 75% right. He may have been motivated by personal animosity, but the dirt he found was real. Here's what happened after Krakauer's book came out. First, many of Mortensen's friends rallied around. Scott Darsney, who Krakauer interviewed for his story, was clearly appalled at how he came off sounding in the book. But secondly, Montana State University opened an investigation into Montana State University? The Montana State Attorney General has more teeth than the university, opened an investigation into Mortensen's foundation, the Central Asia Institute, and that investigation determined that most of Krakauer's allegations about fiscal impropriety were, true as all get out. Mortensen was ordered to pay back more than $1 million of charity money that he had blown through, and he was caught red-handed engaging in some practices that were, honestly, they were pretty close to straight-up embezzling, like getting reimbursed twice for his expenses, once by the Southeast Asia Foundation, or the Central Asia Foundation, and then again by the sponsoring university or organization for whom he was giving a talk or leading a seminar. So, there's that. Here's where it starts getting ugly. And here's where my tone is going to shift. Because I've been, kind of neutral, maybe slightly approving of Mortensen. But you know what? When the shit hit the fan, the first thing this guy did was to try to throw his co-writer under the bus. That is really conduct unbecoming. The co-writer was David Oliver Relin. He was this guy, the smaller dude in the gray. He was a professional nonfiction writer based in Portland, a freelance nonfictioneer. In lengthy interviews with friendly interviewers at places like Outside Magazine, Mortensen made the case that he didn't know nothing about no journalism stuff. He trusted the professional, Relin, to know whether he could stretch facts and smush events together for dramatic effect. And if you're wondering, the answer is no, you can't. And frankly, there's no evidence that Relin ever did, although he may have. We don't know. Here's a snippet of what he said, and I'm going to read it to you because, of course, you probably can't see this screen. I've been having trouble with it. Hopefully this is better than it has been lately, but Mortensen says, I started reading 3 Cups of Tea, or writing 3 Cups of Tea in 2002, doing 6 chapters myself. I went to New York to 4 publishers, and they all said the same thing. Story's great, but the writing sucks. Ha 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 ha. Continuing, it's really complicated. But I'm not a journalist. I don't take a lot of notes. David and I collaborated. He did nearly all the writing, along with hundreds of interviews of those involved in the story. I helped him piece together the whole timeline, and from that we started creating the narrative arc and everything. David insisted on writing the book in third person, which is really awkward. The publisher said, Greg, you're too understated. This needs to be in the third person. My wife, Tara, also told me that if I wrote a book, it would be a pamphlet. What happens is, when you recreate the scenes, you have my recollections, the different memories of those involved, you have his writing, and sometimes things come out different. In order to be convenient, there are some omissions. If we included everything I did from 1993 to 2003, it would take 3 books to write it. So there were some omissions and compressions and, I don't know, what's that called? Interviewer says, literary license? Mortensen, yeah. So rather than me going 2 or 3 times to one place, it would synthesize into one trip. He would synthesize it into one trip, and I would squawk about it and be told that it would all work out. Interviewer, so you're saying that you were new to the process, busy, and were naive about how nonfiction is written, and they were sometimes saying, let's tell it this way, it's better. Mortensen, yes, definitely. I was also overseas a lot in Afghanistan. We'd been really launching there since 2000. When I was there, David would read the manuscript to me over the phone and so forth. Interviewer, when the book came out, did you read parts of your story that made you say, hey, I don't think this is accurate? Mortensen, yeah, especially in regards to the timing. Like, we went there 3 times, twice you went there in the fall, let's just make it one fall trip. At the end of the book, I took 3 trips to northern Afghanistan over a year and a half. Those were synthesized into one trip. So you see what he's trying to do here? He's saying, yes, there are factual inaccuracies in the book. I tried to tell him they were there, but he said not to worry about it, and I'm not a journalist, so who am I to question his literary judgment? Extraordinarily uncool, particularly for a guy who had in fact written journalistic articles for publications in small mountaineering journals in the past. So this I'm not a journalist, I defer to the experts claim is laughable, and in light of subsequent events, maybe worse than laughable. Mortensen, still as of early 2013, is on the payroll at the foundation he created, drawing a yearly salary in the $880,000 range. Krakauer, a couple of months ago, reprised the whole thing on a massive new report, making the case that actually it wasn't a couple of months. It was a couple of months ago last year when I refreshed these slides. So it was last year, or maybe a year and a half ago. That things are still not right with Mortensen and the foundation. There's a Daily Beast article that he cranked out last year, which I will put up in the reading for you to check out. And as for David Oliver Relin, he jumped off a cliff in the Columbia Gorge 4 years ago. And that's why I actually don't like Greg Mortensen very much. I have no idea what role this whole brouhaha had in driving David Oliver Relin to that extreme, but, something did, and it certainly didn't help. Okay, so that is that. I'm scheduled to talk about James Fry, but I think I'm going to bump that. It's only about a 10-minute talk, and I'll just do that next week. So, since you have already watched the 60 Minutes movie, the 15-minute 60 Minutes episode, or 10 minutes, I think, that means that you're ready to go forth and seize the weekend, right? I just can't let it go, can I? Okay, that's all I've got for you. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on Monday. As soon as I find... There it is. Stop recording now.